And tonight we are going to be studying the subject abundant health from our series Living Without Disease. Now, the last time, again, I made reference to some books, and I want to mention them again. You can go and get this book online. It's called The Itinerary of a Breakfast, and it's by John H. Kellogg, medical doctor from the late well into the 1900s. He is a very noted physician, years ahead of his time. He would have lectures at his sanitarium, of which news reporters, other doctors from around the country would come and just sit and listen to the information that he had. A lot of it they could not grasp and see at that particular time. But today there are things that God allowed Dr. Kellogg to understand, principles that were found in the Word of God, believe it or not, that he was able to bring into his medical practice. Things that, again, that he talked about. Today, doctors are starting to recognize it, and they're becoming excited and jubilant, and it is truly being a blessing to so many. But these were things, brothers and sisters, that was studied and understood well as early as, and again, the 1800s, even things before then. But Itinerary of a Breakfast. For a medical doctor, the information that is in this book is written in, if not demeaning in any way, but in kindergarten form, to where you can understand these principles and teach them not only for yourself, but also to your children. So again, I recommend this book, Itinerary of a Breakfast. Also, there's a book here which we will be referring to. The quotations on our handout tonight was taken from this book, Abundant Health, by Julius Gilbert White. And this too is just a marvelous medical manual on the principles of health and what we can do to be healthy as God would have us. And this book here, Physiology and Hygiene, first book in Physiology and Hygiene by, again, John H. Kellogg. And last but not least, certainly not least, but where all this has its foundation is right in the Word of God. And there's also another book, The Ministry of Healing by Ellen G. White. Brothers and sisters, these are a wealth of information. And with these simple readings, we need not come behind in any gift. And so, brothers and sisters, I believe if you were to take those books and study them in depth, you would have such an understanding on health that you could not believe. But nonetheless, so I wanted to make that reference to you just in case we get into this and I'm not able to make those references. Abundant Health by Julius Gilbert White. Itinerary of a Breakfast by John H. Kellogg. First book in Physiology and Hygiene. And the book Ministry of Healing. Those simple books right there. If you are not able to go to advanced education far as sanitariums, you're not able to go to learn these principles from others, you can pick up these books, and by the Spirit of God, you will have a great understanding. I want us to go to our handout tonight, Abundant Health. You should have that. If you haven't downloaded, you should pull it up and and you'll be able to go through it. There are scriptures there. Again, references from the book Abundant Health, as well as maybe one or two references from Physiology and Hygiene. So again, Abundant Health is our subject tonight in our series, Living Without Disease. And what we have understood from our previous studies, as we saw and we understood what disease is. We're not going to go too much into it because we want to cover some of that tonight. But we began to look at the steps to be taken in the recovering of health. And this is very important for us tonight to understand this principle, because as we approach this subject, we're not going to approach it from the standpoint of looking at your isolated case of disease. Again, you might be struggling with high blood pressure. You might have diabetes. You might have blood disorder. You might have Parkinson's and a slew of other ailments, heart disease. You might have clogged arteries. So many things that people have begun to experience as it was normal, as though they were destined to be sick. They hit the age of 50 and all of a sudden it looks as though we are destined to be sick. And next thing you know, the cabinet in the bathroom is filled with all sorts of pills and medications. And we begin to take these things as though this is normal. And brothers and sisters, it is abnormal for you and I for us to be living on medications. It is abnormal. And we must begin to retrain the mind with the principles that are found right here in the Word of God. There's one on your handout. As a matter of fact, let's start at the beginning. Abundant health. It says this: by His own working agencies, He has created material which will restore, watch this, the sick to health. If men and women would use aright the wisdom God has given them, this world would be a place, watch this, resembling heaven. By His own working agencies, God has created material which will restore the sick to health. And brothers and sisters, tonight, if you are sick, God can restore you to health. You can be restored. But brothers and sisters, we must learn. We must submit to the will of God. We must, like David, say, Lord, the bones which have been broken, teach them to rejoice. David said, I acknowledge my iniquities. David acknowledged that the condition he was in mentally. Today, what David was struggling with in Psalms 51, today, that would be diagnosed as anxiety, insomnia. That would be diagnosed as a mental illness. But David did not go to the physicians. David went to God, and what did he find? He found peace. So the insomnia that today he would be diagnosed with, the anxiety attacks that he would be today diagnosed with, the depression that he today would be diagnosed with, he went to God and he realized that he was in this condition not because of his parents, not because of his grandparents, but he said it was his sin, it was his unrest that brought him in this condition. And generally, when we start going through these battles with the mind, we start looking for outlets to somewhat console us, whether it be alcohol, whether it be food, whether it be relationships, or all sorts of things that tend to bring us into the position of sickness, can be healed by acknowledging that we are in these conditions because we are hanging on to guilt. Notice what it says. Next statement on your handout: abundant health. It says, beloved, I wish, God speaking, I wish above all things that thou mayest what? Prosper and be in health, even, he says, as thy soul prospereth. Brothers and sisters, these are promises that we must take to God in prayer. Lord, you said that you have working agencies. You have created material that can restore me to health. If I would but use them aright, then I can, as it were, be in a place of heaven where there is no sickness, where there is no death. Notice God's promise. He wants us in health. Next statement. God be merciful unto us, David says, and bless us. Cause his face to shine upon us. Selah. That, watch this, that thy way may be known upon the earth. Thy saving what? Health. Among whom? All the nations. God desires you and I to proclaim to all the world what? His saving health is what God would have us to proclaim to the world. The Bible tells us in the book of Numbers, chapter 23, I believe it's verse 9, where Balaam saw God's people, and one of the things he said was that God's people were not to be reckoned, to be counted, to be considered with the nations. In other words, God's people could not compare. The people of the earth could not compare themselves to God's people. Why? Because God had brought them into a peculiar situation where he said, through obedience, the diseases that plague society would not be found among you if we would give heed. So in other words, if we can look at society today I heard a startling statistic, and it said that people over the age of 85, 58% of them, it is normal, or it is understood that they will suffer from Alzheimer's disease. 58% of people over the age 85. We are told that 2/3 of society, 2/3 of Americans are obese. 2/3 are obese. They are seeing now in children, no longer what they would call juvenile, but they are seeing in children as young as the age of 10, adult onset type 2 diabetes are now seen in children as early as the age of 10, of which is an epidemic that they said they will not understand what to do until these children begin to die and they begin to study their corpse. Brothers and sisters, understand that with the way and the rate society is going, God wanted a peculiar people that would not be reckoned. Why? Because you could not look at God's people who followed his principles and put them in a category, because at the age of 50 and 60 and 70 years old, you would not see traces of heart disease. You would not see obesity among God's people. You were not to see the various cancers flourishing among God's people. Not because God put this invisible disease disease-proof shield around us, but because God gave principles that if you and I would follow, God promises, if you would be obedient, I will not suffer the diseases to come upon thee. Because you would understand these principles, and with these principles, you would move through life. In other words, with the education that God would give, you would walk into the grocery store and you would be able to look around that grocery store. And because of these principles, you would make right choices. You would look at the things that are being offered you, and because of the education that you have, you would make right choices. So it's not that there's this invisible shield that would keep you from disease. Not that you go to the doctor and he says, I'm seeing that there is a lump on your breast, and you go and say, I don't claim that. I claim the blood of Jesus on that on that spot that the doctor is seeing. No, brothers and sisters. Now, we can understand that God moves in miraculous ways, but we don't want to be presumptuous. We don't want to put things in our mouths that will bring about disease, and things on our bodies that will bring about disease. And then we want to turn around and claim God's promises, the principles that he gives us, the wisdom, the understanding. God says, Hosea 4:6, my people are destroyed for what? A lack of knowledge. Lack? Did God withhold something? No, he says, because thou hast rejected knowledge. So what we don't have is because we have rejected. Let's go to our next statement. And this is where we get into understanding the principles. What is health? Notice your handout. It says this: health is a natural, normal state. What is health? It is a natural, normal state. It goes on. A diseased condition develops when we fail to maintain health. So disease is the absence of health. So what is health? Health is a normal state of our being. That is normal. So when someone says good health, well, health itself is good. So we want to understand, again, we have to train our mind. We want to build new pathways in our minds. And that is, what is health? Health is a normal state of my being. When I am sick, it is because not that disease came in and overtook health. It is because I failed to maintain an environment of health. So disease comes when health is not maintained. And then what we understand when we take the principle, what is disease? Disease is the effort of nature that is trying to recover health. Watch this. We'll get to that in a moment. So what is health? It is a natural, normal state. How, next part, how to combat dis-ease. Disease is not always some entity which drives out and overcomes health. The true science of conquering disease is to do, let me say that again. The true science of conquering disease is to do so by what? Restoring health. Wait a minute. How do you deal with disease? You must restore health, rather than expect to restore health by trying to conquer disease. Now, let's look at this for a moment. You have a headache, and the normal way, what has become normal, but which is abnormal, I'll just say it that way. The abnormal way to deal with a headache is to grab and reach for aspirin. And what you're trying to do is conquer the pain. You have done nothing with the disease itself, which is the result because health has been removed from the system. It has not been maintained. Health has been discarded. Therefore, disease comes. There's the headache. And so rather than restoring health, we grab for medicine to remove the symptom that simply is telling us that health is departed. Are we together? So now, how do we deal with disease? We must restore health. That's what we must do. We must restore health. You say, well, wait a minute, I have diabetes. We must restore health. I have cancer. We must restore health. Wait a minute, I'm struggling with my weight. We must restore health. Because by restoring health, the symptoms, which is the fruit of the discomfort, begins to diminish. All right, let's look at this. One more time, how to combat disease. Get this in our heads. Disease is not always some entity which drives out and overcomes health. The true science of conquering disease is to do so by restoring health. How do we conquer disease? We restore health. So when we get sick, we must start thinking about our health rather than thinking about the disease. Let's go. Maintaining our health. And there's a scripture, Exodus 15:26. Put it in your notes. Look it up later. Health is maintained. Watch this. Health is maintained by forces which are always persistently at work, which need to have all hindrances to their work removed and all possible assistance given. In other words, health is maintained by forces which are always persistently at work. Psalms 91, God tells us the curse, Proverbs, Job 26, I believe it is, where it says the curse causeless shall not come. But in Psalms 91, it says the terror that walketh by night, all of these different things shall not come nigh thy dwelling. The various things that we cannot see are constantly being resisted by what? A system that God has put within us, and is called the immune system. The immune system. That is a system that is constantly at work to attack any foreign, unwanted bacteria that can begin to lay the groundwork for disease. There is an immune system. And if we did not have that immune system, then you and I would not be talking today. This is that system that has been put in place to combat disease. But now, wait a minute. We must understand how the immune system works so that whatever would hinder that defense mechanism, we get it out of the way. All right. The immune system is always working, but we must cooperate with that immune system by keeping out of the system things that would tie the system's hands, so that the enemy can just move around in the body at leisure with no threat from white blood cells, those fighting cells that goes through the body and finds bacterias and they arrest it and they take it to various parts of the body where it can be expelled from the human system altogether. So next quotation, it says, disease is an effort of nature to do what? To free the system from conditions that result from a violation of the laws of health. So we say, wow, disease is a problem and we want to fight the disease. Back in the 80s, there was this war on cancer. And we saying that there need to be, I remember Huckabee saying we need to have a war on diabetes and a war on heart disease. And it was like a lead ball, went up and went down, and it just passed out of people's minds. But the reality, brothers and sisters, is that we don't need to be at war with disease. We need to be focusing on the maintaining of our health. The focus is in the wrong place. it needs to be on health. And the very people who are at war with disease are themselves harbingers of disease. They are harboring disease in their very systems, while they think that disease is the enemy. And disease is a foreign, is something that is not normal, but it is an effort of nature to assist. Here it is. In case of sickness, the cause should be ascertained. And brothers and sisters, a lot could be said about that. But it says in sickness, in case of sickness, the cause should be ascertained. Unhealthful conditions should be changed. Wrong habits corrected. Then nature, watch this, is to be what? Assisted in her effort to expel impurities and to reestablish right conditions in the body. In other words, nature is striving to be healthy. Disease comes, whatever that disease is, and obesity is not always a sign of disease. Anorexia is also a disease. So we must look and understand, let me ascertain these situations, and then I must work with nature. I must work with my body. Why? Because my body wants to be in a normal state, and that is, it wants to be in health. I must strive to work with my system. Notice, prevent sickness. And this is Hosea 4 and verse 6. But it says, prevent sickness. At least 90% of human illness could be prevented if people knew the laws of life and observed them. Once again, at least 90% of human illness could be prevented if people knew the laws of life and did what? Observe them. And yet, of the billions of dollars spent each year in the United States for medical care, it is estimated that not 3% is spent for prevention of disease. All of the billions of dollars that go into research, not even 3%, probably not even 1%, is spent upon how do we maintain health. Because brothers and sisters, just understand this. The CDC, the FDA, the medical board, they see what it takes to maintain health. Don't be deceived. They see what health is. However, health is not financially productive for them as well as for those who are profiting off disease. Let me say that again. The FDA, the CDC, the medical boards, they understand what health is, but health is not profitable for them nor for the industries that are making a profit off of our and us being sick. It is not financially in their best interests to assist in maintaining health. It is better and more profitable for disease to thrive. It is more profitable because every time they are confronted with overwhelming statistics that shows that their products are creating problems, nothing is ever done about it. The government does not step in and begin to call for changes. Nothing is done about it. So you and I, brothers and sisters, must begin to take these principles in our own hands. Because if we're waiting for the FDA to be concerned about our health, that day will never come. Notice, it says, the need of the hour is not for more hospitals, surgery, and drugs, but for more information about how to live to be normally well, how to prevent, watch this, the 90% of prevalent disease. 90%. Now, I know some will look at this and say, well, wait a minute. Your premise is incorrect. Why? Because we all have cancer cells. It has been shown that genetically there are things that our parents have had that they genetically pass down in the DNA. But brothers and sisters, we want to understand something. Generally speaking, the Bible tells us that the iniquities of the fathers shall be visited upon the children unto the third and the fourth generation. So we do know that there are laws of heredity that is passed down. However, when we look at Ezekiel 18, put this in your notes, God says that the son should not perish for the iniquity of the father if he chooses to walk in a different direction. We must understand this, is that what we primarily inherit from our parents that brings about our diseases is their lifestyle. In other words, your father died of a heart attack. It is highly possible that you can die if you continue those same habits. Your father had diabetes. It is likely that your DNA may have that bent towards being susceptible to that various disease. However, your lifestyle, brothers and sisters, your lifestyle will pull the trigger and allow that disease to become prevalent in your own life. So we must understand that yes, we see things in our parents' lives. We do not have to continue down that road if we do not choose. Because if that was a viable reason, then when our parents commit a crime and when we commit the same crime, then we could go to the judge with the excuse to say, listen, that is my DNA. It wouldn't stand in court. Thus, if it does not stand in court, logically speaking, we should not accept that when it comes to maintaining of our health. There are choices that you and I must make. So as we talk about disease, think of this. Think of how they go into these labs and they do these case studies with mice and different type of things. And all of a sudden, these mice develop these tumors and these cancers and these diabetes and all this type of thing. How? They don't inject them with diabetes. They don't inject them with cancer. They give them a particular diet. They give them a certain type of diet. The diet that will produce that disease. There was a report that came out just maybe a few weeks ago, maybe even a month now, and it says that the standard American diet will kill a surviving prostate cancer victim. In other words, you survive prostate cancer through operations or surgery. If you continue on the standard American diet, that diet will kill you. So what does that tell us? When they want those diseases in those animals, they give them a certain diet that will create that disease. So what does that tell us? That diet that they're giving them is the same diet that they're giving us. Same diet that we go out and work hard and we walk down the supermarket and we walk down those aisles and we pick up those cancer, diabetic, obesity, field foods. No, the ingredient doesn't say diabetes, because if it did, brothers and sisters, I still believe that many of us would eat it. Look at cigarettes. They tell you that this will destroy your children, will increase birth defects in your children, will cause cancers. And what do you see people doing? Give me a pack of menthol light and I'll take a box. No, give me the Slims. They still smoke it. Pepsi-Cola tells you that one of their ingredients on that soda can is carcinogenic, meaning that it is a cancer. It is an ingredient that can lead to cancer, and Pepsi has not lost any stock. They haven't shut down. Why? Because people are still drinking it. So I believe if you walk down that grocery store aisle and they said, this is the aisle if you want to get diabetes, this is the aisle if you want to get cancer, this is the aisle if you want to have heart disease. If they had those labels out on the grocery store aisle, people would still shop. Now, some will be upset and offended, but they'll still shop. If they took the signs down, they'll still walk down those aisles. So you and I must understand is that these illnesses that is plaguing society are choices that individuals are making. Notice, let's look here at our next section. Death is mostly eat. In other words, when you look at the word death, it is 3/4 eat or 3/5 eat. All right. So you have DEATH. All right. So death is mostly eat. Watch this. This is a doctor from the 1800s all the way into the 1900s. These are doctors who, again, as early as the early 20th century, began to recognize that food played a large role in the maintaining of one's health. And this doctor here says the two chief causes of disease are what? Food and drink. The two chief causes of disease is what? Your food and what you drink. All right. We have Flint, Michigan as an example. We are hearing about what's going on in Maryland. We're being told they're being told not to drink the water in New Jersey. We understand the gas leak going on in California when these floods take place in these in the Midwest, in those central states. When those floods takes place, those water systems back up. It pollutes the water. What we drink and what we eat, brothers and sisters, is the chief causes of disease. Brothers and sisters, we're living in a society where the plagues are in the earth. Not those 7 last, but those plagues. Plagues are in the earth. Why? Because of the wickedness of man. Let's move on. Dr. Harvey Wiley. I believe, he says, I believe I would not be far out of the way to say that diet may be said to be a factor in what? Every disease to which man is heir. So in other words, diet is a factor in every disease that man falls victim to. John Harvey Kellogg, at least 9/10 of all chronic maladies which doctors are called upon to deal might be successfully treated without the use of drugs by a physician well acquainted with the varied resources afforded by the science of nutrition. Watch this. On the second page, your second page, it says, I maintain, there's another doctor here, I maintain that if all human beings were well nourished, every cell in the body, as God intended it should be, we would have most of our public health and medical problems solved. If we can just get nutrients, if we can just put in our bodies that which the cell cries out for. And what does it cry for? It cries out for the nutrients. Let's move on. Eat for health. Eat for health. Now, this reference here is taken from a book called by Harvey Kellogg. It's called Physiology and Hygiene. Notice the statement, eating for health. Food are those substances which nourish the body and keep it in good working order. So in other words, when you think of food, think of it not as something that smells good. Don't think of something that has all these condiments with it and all these trappings on it. And don't think of it as something that the waiter comes and it smells good on the plate or in the pan or whatever he gives. Don't think of food in that way. Think of food as that which nourishes the body and keeps it working in the right order. Think of food in that way. Food is something that nourishes the body, not poisons, nourishes the body and keeps it in good working order. Thus, we might flip it and understand the opposite is that which does not nourish the body and does not keep it in good working order can be classified as a poison. What is that saying? That is saying that many of the things in our grocery stores can literally be classified as poisons. Poisons. And many today are filling their bodies with poisons, metals, chemicals that the body cannot recognize and cannot use. And thus, that immune system, that wonderful system, begins to trap those metals and begins to move them and isolate them and put them in certain places. And we end up with kidney stones, we end up with gallstones, we end up with tumors, we end up with fibroid tumors, we end up with all these various illnesses in the body because the immune system, those white blood cells are trapping these various things and they're trying to isolate them. And brothers and sisters, these things are causing internal problems. Praise God for the immune system that does not let that poison immediately kill us. So again, when you think of food, food does what? It nourishes my body. It keeps it in working order. So whatever does the opposite, I must start looking at it as a poison. You say, how would I do that? In other words, you see all these words on the back of here. All right. This is now when you go and pick something up in your grocery store and you turn it over to the ingredients, and the ingredients has as many words as you find on the back of this book, that's a poison. Put it back. In other words, you go and say, man, I'm going to get me some juice. And you turn it over and say, what's in it? And they got all of these ingredients. You take that juice and you put it back on the shelf because that ain't juice. That's poison. You say, I want to get me some potato chips. And you go and you turn that bag over and it has all of these ingredients. You know what you do with those bag of chips? You put it back on that shelf. You say, I need some bread. Man, let me get some bread. Man, that bread sure smells good. And you turn that bread over and it has all these ingredients. You know what you do with that bread? You take it and you put it back. Because what's that? That's poison, brothers and sisters. And this is why, because it does not nourish the system. And you say, well, how can you say that? Those of you who have made bread, you don't have all those ingredients in your bread. You have some flour, you may have some yeast, you got some water, you got some oil, you may have some soy milk, you may have some almond milk, you may have something there to hold it together, but maybe 5 ingredients at the most that you have there to make your bread. And all of a sudden you go to a grocery store and they got over 20 ingredients. And brothers and sisters, you have to know this. And I tell my wife this all the time, is that by law, they do not have to put all the ingredients on their particular product. It is a protection of their quote unquote secrets. So if they got 20, Lord knows how many other things is in there that they just don't tell you about. And I was looking at a presentation, I forget the gentleman's name, and he was dealing, the presentation is called Fats, Sugars, and Salts. And he was showing how that companies study that through fats, sugars, and salts, that they can make their products addictive. In other words, you remember some years ago, and it still may be there, I haven't seen it in a while, but Lay's potato chips. Lay's would say, I bet you couldn't eat just one. And it was a catchy slogan, but there was a truth behind that because of the fats, the sugar, and the salts. It's addictive. And they study how to keep you addicted to their particular product. So you can't eat just one. And what he also discovered is that when he went to one of the plants where they make these cereals that you and I tend to eat, and he said that he tasted the cereal. They let him taste the cereal without the salt in it. And he said it literally tasted like metal, like he was eating metal in his mouth. And what happened was the salt is there to mask that metal taste because of all of those minerals. In other words, you turn that box of cereal over and you say, wow, it has zinc, has iron, has this, has that. And you say, wow, that's good. I need all those. I need that. Yeah, that health guy was telling me I need some more zinc and iron. You put in there. But not knowing, brothers and sisters, that those are inorganic minerals that the body cannot do anything with. Those are hard metals, almost like if you went and took something and just said, man, look at that chair, and you just boom, 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 chipped it, and all that metal fell off. I've gone to people's homes and I've seen fruit. Then they will have a nail in the midst of the fruit. Why? Because someone told them that that's how you get iron. Someone says, yes, if you want iron, then cook in a cast iron pan, and that iron that gets off into the food, that is how you get your iron up. Brothers and sisters, those are inorganic materials which eventually will become gallstones, kidney stones, or something worse in your body. What you need are those things which God naturally allows to be put in a particular form where the body can digest it, such as in our fruits and in our vegetables, through the wonderful system of plant-based food. But another subject. So again, think of food for a moment. When you think of food, what is food? Food is a substance which will nourish and keep the body in a good working order. Let's look. Our bodies are composed of what we eat. If we eat what? Bad food, our bodies will be made out of poor material and will not be able to do their work well. We ought to know what things are what? Good for us to eat and what will what? Do us harm. What will do us harm? All right. I want us to look at this section here. This last section we're going to look at tonight. Again, we're studying abundant health. That is our subject tonight. Again, we've been looking at our series, Living Without Disease. The last time we were together, we went through the various steps concerning health. And that is in our handout, Living Without Disease, that is there on the website and on our live stream page, as you could download at any time. Tonight, we're looking at abundant health. We're understanding how to approach the understanding of health. Because a lot of times, this person has this ailment. This person has that ailment. This person has this. And so you're talking with this person. You say, well, you need more of this. Okay, no, not you. Them. I want them. No, what you need. And we go back and forth and we're trying to treat all these different diseases. Now, some things will require special attention. I don't want us to negate that point. Some things will require special attention, but what they all unanimously need is health. Regardless if you have diabetes, they have cancer, they have high blood pressure, they have heart disease, they have gallstones, they have kidney stones. What do we need to do? All of them need to be brought back to a normal, healthy state. And as they're being brought back to that normal, happy, healthy state, we can target the individual symptoms. Are we together? So in other words, the goal is to be brought back to health, to get the system in a right working order so that things are functioning and moving as they should. There is rest. There is sunshine. There is, I said rest. There is exercise. There is nutrition. There is temperance. We are trusting. We are in the open air. All of these things, we are in plenty of water. All of these things are coming back into play into our everyday life. And yet we can specifically target, okay, let me look specifically and target these individual diabetes, but where the overall goal is we're trying to maintain health. Because people get sick and they want to know, what can I take for this, when they need to be saying, how can I restore health? Because you might deal with that individual thing, but you still may not be healthy. You might remove your kidney stones. You might have those gallstones removed. You may pass them. They're gone. But you have not come back to a normal state of health. Your symptoms of diabetes will lessen, and you might get off the insulin. You might be able to save your cells. You might not need those type of things anymore. You may not get to the point of having your legs and you may not lose your eyesight. But if you do not maintain health, then that disease will come back. You might get to the point where you lose weight, but it doesn't mean you're maintaining your health, because various people lose weight many different ways, only to get it back. Why? Because they never learn how to maintain a healthy environment. So they say, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to slow down eating this. I'm going to slow down eating that. So I'm not going to eat so much of the poison. I'll eat a little bit of the poison. I'm not going to drink so much of the poison. I'll drink a little bit of poison. But we're not eating things that are nourishing the body. I think you understand. Let's look here. And looking at our time, we may not even be able to cover all this. But I want us to look at fads and trends. As a matter of fact, so we don't try to cram too much, we'll stop here. And the next time we come together, we will look at these fads and these trends, because I really want to get into these things. Now, again, you have the handout, and so you will not be left behind. You have it there. You can take it, read it, study it. If you have questions, you can find me on Facebook, EG Bible School, Facebook/EGBibleSchool.org. And you could always send me a question regards to some of the things that you have heard tonight or in any of the previous series that we have done. Again, brothers and sisters, abundant health is what God has come to give us. He came to give us life, and life more abundantly. And that's what God desires for each and every one of us. And that is something that we should also desire. So again, we want to thank you for tuning in tonight. Again, we look forward to being back here with you on next Wednesday evening, where we touch on this subject again, abundant health, as we study fads and trends, things we do not want to be a part of. We want to be consistent. We want to say, Lord, renew a constant spirit within me. Lord, I want to be consistent in walking in the light that is shining upon my pathway. I can overcome disease through the power of God. God can unite with our wills. If we will unite our will, our choice with the power of God, we can overcome any besetting sin, any addiction known to mankind, through the power of his grace, it can be broken now, brothers and sisters, if we would just simply say, Lord, into thy hands I surrender my heart. Lord, not my will, but let thy will be done. And what is God's will? That we would be in health even as our soul prospers.
You've been listening to gospel media recorded by Everlasting Gospel Bible School with Pastor Deron Tinsley. To contact, support, or obtain similar media from Everlasting Gospel Bible School, contact us at P.O. Box 204-209, Augusta, Georgia 30917, or call us at 706-421-7719. And lastly, on the web, visit us at egbibleschool.org. Again, that's egbibleschool.org. May God richly bless you.